There are luxury bag brands that dominated fashion for decades, brands that celebrities carried, brands that had year-long wait lists, brands that defined status and wealth. And in the last 3 years, their sales have collapsed by 30 to 50%, while customers flee to competitors or stop buying luxury bags entirely. Coach reported a 26% revenue decline in North America in 2023. Michael Kors saw comparable store sales drop 18% year over year. Kate Spade closed 25% of their retail locations. These aren't struggling startups. These are billion-dollar brands that built empires on logo bags and aspirational luxury. And now they're bleeding customers so fast that analysts are questioning whether some of them will survive the next 5 years. But here's what should terrify every luxury brand executive watching this unfold. The customers aren't just switching to other brands. They're rejecting the entire model that made these companies successful. The logo bags that sold millions in the 2000s are now considered tacky. The aspirational positioning that attracted middle-class buyers is now seen as trying too hard. The brands that defined accessible luxury are dying because the definition of luxury has changed, and they're stuck selling products nobody wants anymore. These are 9 luxury bag brands losing customers at catastrophic rates. Why each one is collapsing, and what it reveals about how luxury fashion is being completely restructured right now. Number 1. Coach. The brand that became too available. Coach was American luxury. In the 1990s, owning a Coach bag meant something. The leather was exceptional, the craftsmanship was real, and the price point of $300 to $500 made luxury accessible without feeling cheap. Then Coach decided to grow. Outlet stores opened everywhere, discounts became constant. Logo bags flooded department stores. By 2010, everyone had a Coach bag. And that's exactly when people stopped wanting them. Here's the death spiral. In 2023, Coach reported $6.7 billion in revenue, but North American sales dropped 26%. Their stock price fell 40% from its 2021 peak. The brand that once had waitlists now has constant 50% off sales that nobody responds to. Walk into any Coach outlet, and it's empty except for tourists who don't know the brand is dead. The problem is overexposure. Luxury requires exclusivity. When your bags are in every outlet mall at permanent discount, you're not luxury anymore. You're accessible. And accessible isn't aspirational. Gen Z won't touch Coach because they associate it with their mom's generation trying to look wealthy. Millennials abandoned it because it stopped feeling special. The core customer base is aging out, and nobody's replacing them. It's not working. You can't make an overexposed brand exclusive again. Once the perception shifts from special to common, it's almost impossible to reverse. Coach is trapped selling discounted bags to a shrinking customer base while burning through cash, trying to rebrand themselves into relevance. Number 2. Michael Kors, the logo that became a punchline. Michael Kors followed the exact same playbook as Coach, but executed it even more aggressively. In 2011, Michael Kors was everywhere. The MK logo bags were the accessible luxury item. Priced at $200 to $400, they offered the look of high fashion at attainable prices. Celebrities wore them. Fashion magazines featured them. Everyone wanted one. Then everyone got one, and then nobody wanted them anymore. The collapse has been brutal. Revenue peaked at $4.7 billion in 2014. By 2023, it had fallen to $3.5 billion, a 25% decline over 9 years. Comparable store sales dropped 18% year over year. The stock price is down 65% from its peak. Department stores that used to give Michael Kors prime real estate now bury it in discount sections. But here's what killed Michael Kors faster than Coach. The MK monogram became so recognizable that people could spot a Michael Kors bag from across a room. That was the point. It was meant to signal that you could afford luxury. But when everyone has the same signal, it stops signaling anything. The MK logo became associated with trying to look rich rather than actually being rich. Gen Z calls Michael Kors bags basic. Fashion forums mock them as the official bags of women who peak in high school. TikTok videos show people embarrassed to carry bags they bought 5 years ago. The brand went from aspirational to laughable in less than a decade. And unlike Coach, Michael Kors doesn't even have a craftsmanship heritage to fall back on. The bags were always about the logo. When the logo became cringe, there was nothing left. Number 3, Kate Spade, the fun brand that lost its identity. Kate Spade was different. It wasn't about logos or status. It was about fun, colorful designs that made you smile. The bags had personality. They were well-made leather goods at $300 to $500 price points that felt special without being pretentious. And then Kate Spade, the person, died in 2018. Coach acquired the brand, and everything that made it unique got stripped away in pursuit of broader market appeal. The numbers tell a story of managed decline. Revenue peaked at $1.4 billion in 2017. By 2023, it had fallen to $1.0 billion. The brand closed 25% of retail locations and cut over 1,000 jobs. Coach, the parent company, has openly discussed whether Kate Spade is worth keeping or if they should just shut it down entirely and harvest whatever brand value remains. Here's what went wrong. Coach tried to make Kate Spade more like Coach. They reduced the quirky designs and increased logo visibility. They pushed for department store distribution to chase volume. They eliminated the things that made Kate Spade distinct and turned it into generic, accessible luxury. The original customers left because the brand lost its personality. New customers didn't arrive because there was nothing unique to attract them. Kate Spade is in the death zone where it's too expensive to be considered a practical purchase, but not special enough to be considered a luxury splurge. It exists in no man's land. Nobody wakes up excited to buy a Kate Spade bag anymore. They buy it if they happen to see it on sale and need a bag. That's not a customer base. That's a liquidation strategy. Number 4, Furla. The Italian brand nobody remembers. Furla was supposed to be the Italian alternative to Coach and Michael Kors. Founded in 1927 in Bologna, they had actual heritage. Their bags were genuinely Italian, made leather goods at $400 to $800 price points. They positioned themselves as the accessible entry to Italian luxury, and somehow they became completely irrelevant. The decline is quiet but devastating. Furla doesn't report public numbers anymore, but industry analysis shows 30 to 40% revenue decline since 2019. They've closed stores across North America and Europe. Department store presence has evaporated. Fashion media doesn't cover them. Influencers don't carry them. The brand is dying through sheer irrelevance. But here's the problem. Furla couldn't solve. They were too expensive to compete with Coach and Michael Kors on accessibility. They were too low priced to compete with Gucci and Prada on luxury status. And their Italian heritage meant nothing to younger customers who don't care about manufacturing origin stories. Furla tried to stay relevant by collaborating with designers and launching new lines. Nobody noticed. They tried raising prices to position more upmarket. Nobody paid. They tried lowering prices to gain volume. Nobody cared. The brand has no identity strong enough to pull customers away from established competitors. They're not dying dramatically. They're fading into irrelevance while their core customer base ages out and disappears. Number 5, Tory Burch. The logo medallion that became cringe. Tory Burch exploded in the mid-2000s with one signature element, the gold double T logo medallion. It was on everything. Flats, bags, accessories. That medallion was instant recognition. You could spot a Tory Burch bag from 30 feet away. That was the selling point. And now that's exactly why the brand is dying. The financial reality is harsh. Tory Burch is private, so they don't report detailed numbers. But industry estimates show 20 to 30% revenue decline since 2019. Wholesale accounts have dropped significantly. Department stores reduced their Tory Burch sections or eliminated them entirely. The brand that once had cult following among 30-something professional women is now fighting for survival. Here's what happened. It suffered the same fate as Michael Kors MK logo. When everyone has it, nobody wants it. Worse, Tory Burch became associated with a very specific demographic. Upper-middle-class white women in their 30s who work in offices and live in suburbs. That's not aspirational anymore. That's a stereotype. Gen Z won't touch Tory Burch because they see it as millennial mom fashion. Millennials are moving away from it because they don't want to be seen as suburban basic. The core customer is still buying, but they're aging and shrinking. Tory Burch tried launching logo-free designs to appeal to younger customers. Nobody noticed because nobody's looking at Tory Burch anymore. The tote that became generic Longchamp had one killer product. La Pliage Tote, a nylon foldable bag that cost $100 to $150, came in every color and became the unofficial bag of prep school students, college girls, and traveling professionals. At its peak, La Pliage sold millions of units per year. Then it became so common it stopped being a choice and became background noise. The company is still profitable, but growth has completely stalled. Longchamp is family-owned and private, but industry analysis shows flat to negative growth since 2015. The La Pliage remains their core product, which is a problem because it's a mature product in a saturated market with no growth potential. But here's Longchamp's trap. They built their entire business on one product. La Pliage is 60 to 70% of revenue. They've tried launching leather bags to move upmarket. Nobody cares. They've tried new nylon designs to refresh the line. Nobody switches. The people buying La Pliage bags now are replacing old ones or buying out of habit. There's no excitement, no desire, no aspiration. The tote became so ubiquitous, it's invisible. None of them register because they're just generic travel bags now. Longchamp went from fashion item to functional commodity. And commodities don't command premium prices or customer loyalty. They're trapped in a slow decline, selling an increasingly irrelevant product to an aging customer base. Number 7. Marc Jacobs, the designer who lost relevance. Marc Jacobs, the handbag brand, is dying. In the 2000s and early 2010s, Marc Jacobs bags were edgy, fashion-forward accessories that attracted young customers who wanted something more interesting than Coach but couldn't afford Chanel. Then the brand diluted itself through diffusion lines, lost creative direction, and became just another accessible luxury bag competing for the same customers as everyone else. The financial decline is measurable. LVMH sold majority stake in Marc Jacobs in 2018 after years of losses. The brand reportedly lost $100 million in the years before the sale. Revenue has contracted significantly. Retail footprint has shrunk. The bags that used to be fashion statements are now heavily discounted and ignored. Here's what killed Marc Jacobs bags. Early Marc Jacobs bags were distinctive, unconventional shapes. They looked different from everything else. Then the brand started chasing trends instead of setting them. They copied what was working for competitors. They launched basics to chase volume. They became generic. Fashion customers don't want generic from a designer brand. They want a point of view. Marc Jacobs bags no longer have one. They're well made and reasonably priced, but there's no reason to choose them over any other accessible luxury brand. That's not a recipe for success. That's a recipe for slow death through irrelevance. The brand is in managed decline. They're privately held, so financial details are scarce, but observable data is clear. Retail presence has contracted dramatically. Department stores either eliminated Dooney and Bourke sections or moved them to clearance. The QVC shopping channel is now one of their primary distribution channels, which tells you exactly who's buying. But here's the fundamental problem. Dooney and Bourke never evolved. They kept making the same bags for the same customers for 40 years. That customer base aged. The brand never attracted younger customers because they never tried to. Their design stayed classic, which is code for outdated, which is code for invisible. Gen Z and millennials don't even know Dooney and Bork exists. The brand has zero presence on social media, zero influencer partnerships, zero cultural relevance. They're surviving on a shrinking base of loyal customers over 60 who prefer traditional American brands. That's not a sustainable business model. That's a countdown to extinction. Number 9, Guess. The 90s brand that stayed in the 90s. Guess bags were everywhere in the 1990s and early 2000s. Logo bags with gold hardware at accessible price points. Sexier, more playful than Coach or Michael Kors. They were the brand for women in their 20s who wanted flash without spending $1,000. And then fashion moved on, and Guess didn't. The numbers show a brand in crisis. Guess overall revenue has been flat to declining for a decade. Handbag-specific sales are estimated to be down 40 to 50% from peak. The bags are now primarily sold through outlet stores and discount retailers. Department stores have eliminated or minimized Guess sections. The brand is clinging to life through aggressive discounting. Here's what happened to Guess. They're stuck in the 90s aesthetically and strategically. The bags still have prominent logos, gold hardware, and designs that worked 25 years ago. The target customer is still young women in their 20s. But young women in their 20s now shop completely differently than they did in 1995. They don't want logo bags. They don't shop in malls. They don't respond to traditional advertising. Guess has tried to modernize, but their attempts feel desperate and disconnected. Collaborations with influencers don't land because the brand has no cultural credibility. New designs don't sell because nobody's looking at Guess for fashion innovation. The brand is trapped in nostalgia with no path forward. The customers who loved Guess in the 90s have moved on to other brands. Young customers today don't even know Guess existed. Why these brands are dying, while others thrive. Here's the pattern. Every brand on this list made the same strategic mistakes. They chased volume over exclusivity. They prioritized logo recognition over design quality. They flooded discount channels to meet short-term sales targets while destroying long-term brand value. They stayed locked in strategies that worked 20 years ago instead of evolving with changing customer preferences. Meanwhile, brands like Bottega Veneta, Loewe, and The Row are thriving by doing the opposite. No logos, limited distribution, high prices, exclusivity over accessibility. They're serving customers who want luxury that signals taste rather than wealth. That customer is growing. The customer who wants affordable logo bags is disappearing. But here's what's most devastating for these dying brands. Coach can't suddenly become exclusive after 20 years of outlet stores. Michael Kors can't remove their logo after building everything on logo recognition. Kate Spade can't reclaim quirky authenticity after being corporatized. Once you've trained customers to wait for discounts and devalued your brand through overexposure, you can't reverse it. The perception is permanent. These 9 brands aren't just losing customers. They're losing their reason to exist in a luxury market that has fundamentally changed. The accessible luxury model is dead. Aspirational positioning is dead. The brands built on these strategies are dying with them. And the customers who once loved these brands aren't coming back. They've moved on to either truly exclusive luxury or practical non-luxury. The middle where these brands exist is disappearing. That's not a temporary downturn. That's permanent structural change that makes these brands obsolete. The bags nobody's buying anymore aren't going to be bought again. The customers who left aren't returning, and the brands bleeding revenue at 20 to 50% annual rates are running out of time to figure out that the market they built their businesses on no longer exists.